Well, hello there, watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with the journalist and broadcaster, Jenny Kleeman, and the Telegraph's comment editor, Annabel Denham. Welcome and great to see both of you. So, one story dominating, as you might expect, the newspapers. Let's take a look. The Financial Times, then, kicking off, says the Chancellor's efforts to fix the public finances in her spring statement have been clouded by fears that taxes could go up. The Times suggests Rachel Reeves will be forced to raise taxes further or cut spending if Trump imposes tariffs on Britain. A simple headline from the Telegraph: 5 years of record taxes. The Express declares reckless Rachel tanks economy by killing growth. Analysis seen by the Eye suggests the measures announced today could push 250,000 people into poverty thanks to benefit changes. The anger at those changes is reflected here too on the front page of the Metro. In the Mirror, Rachel Reeves is accused of balancing the books on the backs of the poor by a union boss. Similar headline for The Guardian too. Reeves accused of balancing the books at the expense of the poor. Meanwhile, the Daily Mail with the headline deluded. Meanwhile, Caleb Cooper, one of the most famous names in British farming, thanks to his involvement in Clarkson's farm, has invited Prince William to come on the show. And according to The Star, we're going towards the time of year when seagulls make the biggest nuisance of themselves. There we go. Jenny Kleeman, Annabel Denham are here with us. Wow, that's quite an interesting set of newspapers, isn't it? So, should we start with the Eye? The question is whether more is on the way, be they tax hikes or extra cuts, because she's claimed some wriggle room, about 14 billion. We'll talk about the impact of that in a minute. But that's still not much, is it, Annabel?
No, it isn't. It's the kind of amount that could be blown off course very quickly, particularly between now and the October budget, which is why so many front-page splashes are talking about the likelihood of further tax increases in October, despite the fact that in the aftermath of the October 2024 budget, Rachel Reeves insisted she would not be coming back for more. I think that was in last December. But look, what did we learn today? Well, the growth forecast, according to the fiscal watchdog, the OBR, has been halved for 2025 from 2% to 1%. The tax burden, because growth is shrinking, is now forecast to reach an even higher proportion of GDP, 37.7%. Let's not forget that actually under the previous Conservative government, it was already forecast to go up to around 37.1%. How is she restoring some of the fiscal headroom which was lost in the aftermath of the October budget? Well, there's welfare reform and there are cuts to day-to-day government spending, specifically the civil service. But ultimately, the Chancellor has ended up back where she started, and some of the newspapers on centre-right-leaning newspapers are saying that she's deluded, and I think that is because there does seem to be a gulf between what she actually stood up and said, and the realities facing the UK economy.
Yes, 14 billion is the figure she clawed back. It takes her back to about 9.9 billion of headroom, which, given what's happening with Trump and tariffs, more announcements on that, certainly tonight, may not be enough. So the point being tax hikes, extra cuts on the way. But right now, the benefits changes is also on the front page of many newspapers, including the Eye there. 250,000 people pushed into poverty by benefits squeeze. The Guardian as well. Reeves accused of balancing the books at the expense of the poor. And this is difficult for Labour supporters to stomach, isn't it?
Absolutely. And, of course, this comes from the government's own impact statement, the government's own figures. It's to do with tightening up the rules on PIP and the health element of universal credit. And, the issue is that the opposition that the government is finding is coming from its own benches. I mean, Mel Stride was not very strong in the Commons today. Most of the blowback that they're getting is from their own MPs who are finding this incredibly difficult to stomach. It goes against everything the Labour Party is supposed to stand for. And until we have the autumn budget, we don't know what tax rises there may be. She says there's not going to be any tax rises, but it is very difficult for a lot of Labour MPs to countenance the idea that there are so many welfare cuts for the poor and there aren't tax rises for the rich, for corporations like Apple, for example, who are doing very well at the moment. The idea that any growth that may be, any silver lining that may be on the horizon is because of planning reform is an interesting one. It's Angela Rayner, really, who's come out of this well and had a good day. But any of this could be wiped out by the 2nd of April when we find out what Trump's plans are on tariffs. So things are very, very precarious. And the thing that's particularly worrying is it's alienating the traditional Labour base.
Absolutely. And, what is interesting is that even Ed Davey of the Lib Dems says we all want to get people back to work in terms of welfare, but to do it on the backs of disabled people, is that really the right way round? Lots of quotes here. For example, Paul Kissack, Group Chief Executive of the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, accusing the Chancellor of putting the burden of the changing world on the shoulders of those least able to bear the load. The government needs to protect people from harm with the same zeal as it attempts to build its reputation for fiscal competence. Thousands of those listed are children, children who have no choice about this. Will it have, the Mirror's with the same thing, balancing the books on the backs of the poor. Will there be a rebellion, do you think? Will Labour MPs have their say on this?
I think in some ways the comms is quite smart from the Labour Party in that a lot of the announcements were made last week, and perhaps Rachel Reeves did not go quite so far today in her spring statement as some had feared. Look, no Labour MP is going to come into government expecting to or wanting to cut welfare, but unfortunately that is this fiscal situation that we now find ourselves in, and the welfare bill is set to absolutely balloon by the end of this Parliament. And the government does need to find ways of cutting it. It needs to find ways of ensuring that those who can work do work, even if they're only able to work part-time, that the government is actually incentivising and supporting those people into jobs. As Rachel Reeves repeated often this afternoon, it's supposedly the party of working people, despite the fact that it's slapping that massive increase on national insurance contributions, which will have a knock-on impact on jobs. But nevertheless, it will be painful for those who are going to see some of their benefits withdrawn, and I think at the moment there's a great deal of uncertainty for those people, and that's something that Labour are going to need to get out in front of.
And it's a simple equation for the Metro. The suggestion that benefit cuts will push 250,000 people into poverty, while the money goes to £2 billion on defence. I know, the aid budget was intended to do that. And the assessment by the government, 370,000 current recipients of PIPs, these personal independent payments, will lose those payments. In terms of those who might claim in the future, 430,000 people will lose. But Rachel Reeves, categoric today, 1,000 people extra each day are claiming these personal independence payments, which is a figure which is utterly unsustainable, is her argument.
Yes, and she's also arguing that the investment that they're making in trying to get people back into work is going to counteract the worst of some of these figures. Of course it is unsustainable, but so much of this is of the government's own making. They have created a rod for their own backs in terms of the very stringent fiscal rules that Rachel Reeves has imposed. She does not have this headroom for herself. Keir Starmer himself, in opposition, said that he wanted growth to be at 2.5%. This is therefore a benchmark that is always going to be there, that he will always be measured against. And all of the predictions look like this is pretty much unachievable given the fiscal rules that Rachel Reeves has set.
But I do think, there's an important point to be made here, which is that overall welfare spending is still going to increase by around, the previous estimate was around £20 billion by the end of this Parliament in terms of the changes that Labour were going to bring in. And she's just cutting that by £4.8 billion. So it is still going to be increasing enormously. And I think she's going to need to find, she's going to find that she's going to need to do more on the spending side of the ledger.
Well, yeah, that's welfare. Let's go on to spending, as in, well, in this case, trying to find the money to spend more, which is taxes, which is the Daily Telegraph's taken it. 5 years of record taxes. A lot of this seems to be driven by Paul Johnson of the Institute for Fiscal Studies, who basically says she's gained a bit of wriggle room, headroom, but it's nowhere near enough, given the buffeting headwinds coming, not least from America. He suggests that actually we've now given ourselves another 6 months of uncertainty while people wait to speculate on the taxes that are to come. And we had uncertainty from July to October last year, which did not do the economy well. He says she's left herself a small headroom only for unexpected extra costs and has left herself at the mercy of events. All of that adds to uncertainty around policy. There is a cost, both economic and political, to that uncertainty. The government will suffer the political cost. We will suffer the economic cost. So that's, you know, what's reflected here in these papers, Jenny.
Yes, and it's the attack line is constantly going to be on this government, that they have they have gambled their entire financial strategy on the idea that there is going to be growth and serious growth. But, you know, as the Telegraph says here, there is now not a single year in this decade that the Labour government will hit economic growth of 2%, according to the OBR. So, you know, they are paying the price of having made this gamble. If it's not going to come from growth, then it's going to have to come from taxes.
Yes, and the Financial Times, again, tax rise fears cloud Reeves's fiscal fix is the headline. Story underneath, though, which is picked up also by the Times, in fact, Brussels expects tariffs of about 20% as US sticks to its guns in last-ditch talks. Well, we know tonight that imports of cars and light vehicles into America are subject to tariffs. It will impact the European Union, which tonight has declared it's deeply upset by this, or deeply regrets, I think the line is. The Times suggests that, you know, the buffeting will come from America. It will impact our car industry, presumably, won't it? So this is, you know, this is the tricky situation, the global situation in which we are, or the Chancellor is operating.
Yes, the expectation is that this is going to be very punishing for the EU. We don't yet know what the exact situation will be for the UK. Donald Trump has accused the European Union of freeloading, that he's argued that there hasn't been a fair deal between the two massive trading blocs when it comes to imports of vehicles in particular. And now he's looking at ways that he can reciprocate some of the tariffs that have been imposed on US manufacturers, and that won't simply be exclusively affecting those manufacturers, but also pharmaceutical companies and tech companies.
Yeah, I mean, there's loads of lines, you know, dropping right now. A White House official expects Congress to pass a measure giving tax breaks to Americans who buy American cars. You know, this idea of driving up manufacturing in America, and also it's on car parts as well. And we know, you know, we've seen Ed Conway's reporting, haven't we, that the car parts go from Mexico to Canada, into America, out again. So, you know, it's going to impact them as well. You know, possibly $10,000, they say, per vehicle in America. We've got so much more to talk about, haven't we? Good job. We're coming back for more of it later on. Next up, those senior Trump administration officials still insisting there was nothing classified in their leaked group chat messages. We'll discuss that from The Guardian and elsewhere, no doubt, in just a moment.
I want to start the programme today with a name, a story that I can't get out of my head. The campaign has now started. This is your chance. Tell people. This is the Politics Hub. It's not correct. The tax burden is projected to go up.
No, but
I'm not. This is my interview. Look, this is ridiculous.
No one does care about us.
I'm really interested in that. On the Politics Hub, we like to push the boundaries. He's got the majority. The question is, what is he going to do with it?
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling. War, unrest, revolutions.
It's not his country, it's ours.
They have succeeded for the first time in their country's history in removing a leader from power. No freedom! Sky News, the full story first. There was fighting here, but there's clearly now a lull, and they're using it to bring up more ammunition. This is a mass exodus in which Russia is hemorrhaging some of its brightest and its best. According to the local weather channel, there have been more than 2,500 lightning strikes and flash flooding, all on top of this week's lethal tornado. What stays with you most in this job is some of the people you meet. What is your worst fear about what the Russians want to do to the children?
They're just boosting demographics by stealing young people.
Would you like to take the opportunity, Mr. President, on Sky News to invite Barack Obama to come here? Mr. Trump, are you running for president? Can you confirm it?
We're going to take a look, a very serious look.
On that day, we saw your fighters killing women, killing children. Was that a mistake? Did you go too far? You couldn't control your fighters? The full force of the state is being used to crush any protest. Free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in. Another alarm. The mood here is jittery and nervous. We're seeing the world get more and more divided, and it's our job to try to make sense of it all.
We're rolling.
Welcome to the world.
Our new podcast, starting now. It's very exciting. Every week, we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Well, welcome back. You're watching the press preview with me once again, Jenny Kleeman and Annabel Denham. Welcome back to both of you. The extraordinary story of the attack plans, not war plans, remember, which have been released in full. What a read they are. And still denials coming from the White House and all who reside in it. US group chat included key Yemen raid details, and yet it's not classified, Jenny.
Yes, I mean, I wonder what it takes for something to be classified. This story is amazing, and perhaps it's particularly amazing for journalists because we're all imagining, what if we picked up our phones and saw that we were included in a group chat like this? But yes, this is because they annoyed the Atlantic. Hegseth originally saying that the Atlantic were completely discredited and you know, we shouldn't believe that that Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor, was included in this group chat at all. And then eventually it being conceded that he had been included. But the explanation being it's OK because nothing classified was said. According to what was released today, Hegseth is quoted in this group chat saying, talking about fighter planes being launched, talking about targets being hit in real time. If this is not classified, I don't really understand, you know, what would be.
Oh, there we go, yeah.
Here we are.
So 210, more F-18s launched, second strike package, strike drones on target. Oh, you've zoomed in. I can't read that bit now.
Too big.
You're going down, you're going down. This is when the first bombs will definitely drop, pending earlier trigger-based targets.
I mean, this seems pretty sensitive stuff. And the thing that's interesting is we're living in this post-truth world where the you know, Secretary of State and the Defence Minister and God knows who else can stand up and say it's not true, we didn't add them, and then it can be proved that it is true. And the thing is, the Atlantic has the receipts. They have them, so they put them all out there. And you know, I don't know if it was incredibly clever strategy that they decided to not release it all at first. But you know, Jeffrey Goldberg had said initially that he decided not to release them all because he didn't want to compromise national security. Well, now he has.
Sequencing for maximum effect.
Is that what it is?
Exactly. Only got a minute left. Do you mind doing the last story for us, which is it broke about this time last night, in fact, which is Harry and his charity set up to honour his mother. You know, bullying claims now it emerges.
Yes, it feels as though this story is just escalating and escalating. Prince Harry seems to have been accused of playing the victim. He's obviously quit this charity, which was set up nearly 20 years ago to help young people in South Africa. It sounds like many members of the charity had either fallen out with or lost confidence in the chairwoman over the last couple of years, the direction that she was taking the charity into. But look, this is heat on Prince Harry, which he is not going to want at this stage. It's not long after it was announced, or the court ruled, that files on his visa form and his comments on drug use related to his migration to America those are now going to be released. Obviously, you've had Meghan's documentary, which has been subject to pretty widespread ridicule. Many think it's about as good.
So I keep saying it, but I do.
You just wonder whether the Sussexes seem to have the reverse Midas touch, and this is just again again, this is
It's
sort of
hard work being
publicity
a
they're not
famous
going to
royal,
want.
isn't it? It has to be said. Jenny and Annabelle, thank you both very much indeed. Thank you. See you for more at 11. Here's the weather, though, now.
A bright start and always a warm welcome. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
So cooler, more unsettled to end the week, but England and Wales look mostly fine and warm again tomorrow. So mainly fine if chilly start with local frost and fog. The north and west will be milder, cloudier and windier. Some rain from the northwest of Ireland through to central Scotland. Central Scotland, Northern Ireland and the northwestern half of Ireland will see outbreaks of rain becoming more extensive during the morning. Most other places look fine, although quite cloudy in the west, but there may be the odd spot of rain near southern Irish sea coast. It'll be cooler in the north, still warm elsewhere, but the wind will pick up in the north and the west. Rain then will extend to all of Ireland, Northern Ireland and Scotland later, becoming heavier and more persistent.
A bright start and always a warm welcome. Qatar Airways sponsors the weather.
Well, our press preview continues in Sky News at 11. Official predictions say 250,000 people will be pushed into poverty following the Chancellor's spring statement. Analysis and details next.